Welcome to Visual Testaments Broadcast with Tim and Donna Avery. Broadcasting from Spartanburg, South Carolina, we're here to bring you encouragement and point the fatherless to the Father and bring hope to the hopeless. This is the Visual Testaments Broadcast.
Welcome to Visual Testaments.
Welcome.
We are Tim and Donna Avery, and we're so excited you guys are joining us today on
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year on our Visual Testaments broadcast. So we have a great show, don't we, honey?
Yes. Actually, what we're going to be talking about today super fires me up, and I know it does Tim. And one of the things I want to point out is that as we go further in 2020, first, we want to be able to encourage you with what we're going to be talking about from the jump of every broadcast. So what we're going to be talking about for this month is 3 key things. Number 1, discipleship. Number 2, deliverance. And number 3, deployment.
So good.
So if that doesn't fire you up, I don't know what will. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And as I said, start of this year, we're going to come out the gate strong, and we want to be able to start every broadcast with letting you know what we're going to be talking about for the month and what the purpose is. The purpose, we wholeheartedly believe, is to build the kingdom up with deliverance ministry, which is so key in all areas, whether it's in the church or the marketplace. And we also want to be able to bring the importance of discipleship all the way around, something that is done nonstop. And also deploying, sending people out, sending those that you're discipling out. And so we want to hop right into that. And we also are going to leave you with a challenge on each broadcast. And we want to hear from you on those challenges. So discipleship, that's what we're going to be discussing today. Tim, I know discipleship is big to you because you love teaching discipleship.
Absolutely. And discipleship, that's one of those things where you just kind of realize that we're all called to disciple other people, whether we realize that or not. We're always learning from other people. We're always growing, whether we realize it or not. We're learning from other people's mistakes, how to do things, how not to do things. So even if you're just in a job environment, you're in the sense of being discipled because you're learning and you're growing in one regard to the other. Now, you could be learning bad habits or bad things that are discipling you to become somebody that you don't want to be. But we're talking about becoming a great disciple of Jesus. And so if you look at discipleship the way Jesus did it, you start to realize that he had his 12 in his close-knit circle. He always had them around them. He allowed them to see up close and personal what his day-to-day life looked like. He pulled away when the crowds got too big and just took his time to be with the Father. And they had to find him, up on the hill or coming down saying, Jesus, where were you? Everybody's looking for you. And he was like, I was spending time with the Father. And so he was giving them glimpses of what it is to walk in a sense of being a discipler, but also what it's like to be human, because Jesus took on the form as a human being. He stepped off his throne to come down, to live as a human being, and to show us exactly how to do that, how to be most effective in this walk called Christianity. So that's the great thing about that. When you look at discipleship, that's why when you're around other people, you start to pick up other people's habits, whether good or bad. You start to talk like them. You start to mimic them. Regardless if you think you're doing it or not, you start to do that. And so discipleship is the same way. We try to think that it's so hard to do, to disciple another person. It's just bringing those people in close to you and just showing them what you do on a daily basis, especially if you're intentionally trying to disciple somebody for Jesus.
That's so good. And the definition in dictionary.com defines as a person who is a pupil or adherent to the doctrines of another, one who embraces and assists in spreading the teaching of another, and any follower of another person. Disciple is a word that's not generally considered as part of every day, but I definitely want to point out that if you are disciplining your mind or your thought pattern or your physical daily activity, especially coming out the gate for New Year. There's so many people with New Year's resolutions and physical fitness ideas, and they are having great intentions coming out the gate for a new year and a new them. And so what I want to point out is that's a discipline. Now, whether you're realizing that consistency is also something that you are disciplining yourself in or not will show by the end of this year because the discipline is often thought of just something that I'm disciplining my body to go to the gym. But more importantly, disciplining your decision making, your thought patterns, your mind discipling yourself, because discipline is discipleship. So discipling yourself is the first key, because if you don't have any followers, I mean, you're simply taking a long walk. And so discipling yourself is really key. What I have found personally, me speaking, is that when you disciple yourself, you'll look up and hopefully there's other people following, but that's not the reason why I'm doing it. I'm discipling myself because that's what Jesus wanted us to do. He wanted us to disciple us and others. It starts with us. So being able to know that I need to stay consistent, because if I'm not consistent at the gym, then my goal of starting out and not finishing strong is useless. And so that's one of the things that I think we get hung up on, the word discipleship, and we think it's only a class at church, when in fact it is not. It is your everyday focus, what you're doing in and out of work, what you're doing in and out of the gym, what you're doing when you choose to sit on the couch and watch TV, and maybe those times where you're sticking your head in the sand with your finances because they just seem so overwhelming. That's a discipline. You're choosing to do that instead of something else. And so it's much like you said, Tim, where we can follow good or we can follow bad choices, good leaders, bad leaders. So definitely the discipleship view, I believe, has been so narrowed into going, well, that's just something they do at church. Yep. When in fact, it's something that we do every single time we choose to make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. So the important thing of this, hopefully you're grasping this, is that you need to follow a blueprint. And the greatest blueprint is Jesus. Right now, as we're doing our fast, one of the things that we're doing, I'm reading John, and I wanted to get in such an intimate picture of who Jesus was and how he acted and how he discipled his 12 people. And so that's what I did. I've been reading a different translation so I can get a fresh look at the master discipler, if you will. And so that is where I'm at right now. I wanted to see what that looked like. And so as I'm reading this, I'm glancing and gleaning from such a fresh perspective of who Jesus is. But right now, we'll just take a break and we'll hear a word from our sponsor.
We invite you to the YouTube channel for Visual Testaments. Visit visualtestaments.com, click on the top tab that says YouTube, and make sure you click subscribe and get our notifications. Tim and Donna Avery invite you to join in on our various playlists. We have 3 to choose from. There's Hope, which will offer great inspiration, Bible teaching, and awesome motivation. Healing, which brings nutrition, inner healing, freedom tips from those addictions that have been troubling you, and Home, DIY gardening and decor tips that you're just going to absolutely love. So click on our YouTube channel today and make sure you subscribe. You can visit our website at visualtestaments.com and be a part. Okay, so we're back. And I love what you were talking about with gleaning from the master discipler.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have to follow a blueprint. And so when we are intentional of the choices that we're making, I know you're just talking about choices. If we're intentional about the choices that we're making, we understand what choices we should be making. And if you understand the master discipler, Jesus, you'll understand how he lived his life and how he chose. You know, it goes back to that old bracelet that we remember, what would Jesus do? It's interesting that we can grasp that simple concept in our choices in our day-to-day. Okay, what would Jesus do if someone cuts me off? You know, I'm driving down the interstate. How do I respond? If someone treats me bad at work and they're just being really testing towards me, how do I respond as a disciple of Jesus Christ? How do I respond when I have an opportunity to share Jesus? How do I do that? And so when you look at the master discipler, I'm reading the book of John right now. When you read the master discipler of who he was and how he responded, you'll start to see exactly what he did. How did he treat people? How did he treat his disciples? How did he treat the Pharisees? How did he treat, the people who wanted to know him? How did he treat non-Jewish people? And so all these things are there for us to glean from. It's just a master blueprint of how to be a discipler.
And Luke 6:48 talks about that too. And that's one of the things that I love is that he talks about in Luke building your foundation on the rock. And that's exactly what you're describing, Tim, is learning from that grounding that Jesus already laid out for us in the Gospels. And so in the Message version, Luke 6:48 talks about it. And he says, I'll start there. If you work the words into your life, you are like a smart carpenter who dug deep and laid the foundation of his house on bedrock. When the river burst its banks and crashed against the house, nothing could shake it. It was built to last.
So good.
But if you just use my words in Bible studies and don't work them into your life, you are like a dumb carpenter who built a house but skipped the foundation.
Yeah.
When the swollen river came crashing in, it collapsed like a house of cards. It was a total loss. And so that's one of the things that we even talk about so much, but in our family, is making sure that we take those thoughts captive and pull them down and bring them to the obedience of Christ. Taking those thoughts captives, in that scripture, it shows that there's a partnership. There's a part of my choices that I have to take ownership, that the Lord's asking me to take a thought captive and now hand it over to Jesus's obedience, making sure it lines up to his obedience, giving it over to Jesus and saying, no, this is a thought. I want you to look it over, Jesus, and let me know if that's a negative thought that should be cast out or a positive thought. And a lot of times it's like I even pointed out before, it says every thought captive, which means some good thoughts are still not God thoughts. And so we can make good thoughts, Lord, over Jesus and choose not to turn them over to him. Wow. But my prayer is that I'm disciplining my mind to take every thought captive, not just the ones that I go, ooh, that's a bad thought. No, not just the negative thoughts, even the positive ones can still not be of God. And so taking every thought captive and handing it to Jesus to line up with his obedience for my life, because the good ones may not be going into the direction of my purpose that he has for me, his will. And so making sure that those disciplines are key every single day, often every single minute, focuses that I'm taking intentionally as a discipleship.
That's so good. And if you think about it, and I love this analogy, it's kind of like having a customs setup in your, it's like you would go through customs in an airport.
Yes.
It's kind of like having that customs.
Like your own TSA.
Yeah, like your own TSA.
So good.
That you're at the airport in your mind. Like Donna's saying, you have some of those thoughts that are good thoughts, but they can be distracting thoughts of what God's actually calling you to do. You might want to go grab an ice cream, but God's telling you need to go talk to this person right now. Ice cream is great. It tastes great. And for a later time, it's going to be a great opportunity for you to enjoy that. But right now, I need you to go talk to this person and give him a word. And so those types of thoughts, it's just a simple and silly example, but that's exactly true. It's a day-to-day thing, a choice by choice, decision by decision. It's going to help you to continue to enrich who you are and to be a great discipler of Christ.
Absolutely. So now as we go into our challenge and the close of this message today, I want to challenge you guys really to be able to take those thoughts captive, every thought captive. We want to hear from you. Go to visualtestaments.com, email us there, click on the link, or email us info@visualtestaments.com. We want to hear from you on what discipleship looks like to you and how do you see it playing out in your day-to-day activities? Because it doesn't matter if you're a pastor or if you work in the marketplace. How does discipleship look for you? How does it begin with you? What does it look like in your morning routine, in your daily routine, even at night before you go to bed? Especially if you're married, now you're discipling not just yourself, but you're playing a very key accountability partner to your helpmate. Anything else to add, Tim?
Nope, that's it. You guys, thank you so much for joining our broadcast, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to the Visual Testaments broadcast with Tim and Donna Avery. Donna and I want to invite you to share your testimony at visualtestaments.com today. Your testimony can be shared on our future broadcast. Be sure to tune in with us next time for the Visual Testaments broadcast.